mid to late spring, and the flowers on the herbaceous perennials are just shooting up and looking fantastic. Hello, I'm Rosy Hardy. This is Rosy Hardy Gardening. Now I've just got a selection here of plants that are quite happy in a shady spot, and there's a good amount of colour, there's a good amount of contrast in height, and various types of things that you can grow. So let's have a little look and start off with one of the family favourites, and this is Veronica gentianoides Tissington White. It has these beautiful spires of flowers which are just off-white, slightly blue, lovely blue veining in them completely. They have a really good low ground covering mat forming mass of foliage. After about 3 years you'd expect the mat of foliage, which is semi-evergreen, to be about or just over a foot, so somewhere between 35 and 40 centimetres, and then these candles, these spikes, go up to somewhere around about 18 inches, 45 centimetres. They've already been flowering all the way down here, and they keep on going up, and they've got this last little tip bit here, lots of different blooms on here, and these ones will finish off as well. Now most people think of Veronica as being something that wants to go in full sun and maybe will tolerate a dry soil. Well, that's actually true of a lot of the alpine types, but the Veronica gentianoides types like a bit of moisture and they like a little bit of shade. So east facing, north facing borders, they are very happy as long as there is available light, i.e. they're not overshadowed by conifers or something like that, then they will be really happy in there. If they start to dry out, they will just get smaller and smaller and smaller, and they do not like it. And also if the flowers are in full sun all day long, this flower spike goes up, it's over within about 5 days. So to keep it going and making sure that it does really well, a moistish soil in a semi-shady or not full sun position is what it really likes. It can be divided as well. So that is Veronica gentianoides Tissington White. Let's stay with things that really like to be in the moisture and which have loved this winter here in the UK, because we have had more than our fair share of moisture. These are the primulas, the candelabra primulas, something to plant around a bog garden in a damp hollow, somewhere like that. They do like their heads in a little bit of sun, but they will tolerate dappled light. You get great foliage clumps at the base, and then they start to put on their flower spikes here, and they are just starting to go up. So you've got the first ring of flower here, then the stem goes up and it goes up and extends, then the next ring of flower comes up, then it extends again, and the next ring, and you can have up to 4 rings, maybe 5 rings of flower on there. They are huge big flowers on this pulverulenta, beautiful sort of cerise colour with a red eye to it, really really beautiful. It's a burgundy eye really, and they have this bloom going up all the way through, the bloom on there, and you get it on your fingers. It's a little bit like sugar coating on the flowers, but just fantastic. So the base will get to probably after 2-3 years somewhere around about a foot, 30 centimeters. They rosette up, you get more and more rosettes. Every rosette will have flower, so as the plant gets bigger, so you have more of these flower spikes, and in full flower somewhere at just below 2 feet, 60 centimeters. Great plant for a boggy spot on the bank of a stream, somewhere like that. These are fabulous for this time of the year. This is Primula pulverulenta. Isn't that a cracking colour? So something else that wants to go in a shady spot here is this one. This is Melittis. Melittis is Lamiaceae, so it's related to the dead nettle and that sort of thing. It has square stems, but it produces these amazing flowers that come out here, and they come out in pairs at the side of the leaf like so. This one is Royal Velvet Distinction. It has a really beautiful dark purple fall here and then a white outer here. And when the insects land on there, there's like a little runway. There are lines showing them to go into the nectar, which is down at the bottom. And the anthers are held on the top. So as the insect goes in, the pollen gets deposited on their backs as they're reversing out. So then when they go into the next flower, so they're pollinating and everything else. Now this is something that will make a really nice clump. It's not going to run around, it's just a clump former. After about 2 to 3 years, somewhere around about 18 inches, 45 centimetres spread, and about 18 inches in height, so 45 centimetres again. Free blooming, really, really super. Square stems, so really strong. They're a bit like iron girders, yeah? It's natural engineering. They're great plants. So this is Melittis, mesophilum, Royal Distinction. Great for dry shade. Then there are lots of Heucheras, lots and lots of Heucheras, but this particular one is Huka Americana. Huka Americana has been used for a lot of breeding of all of the new Heucheras that you see around, but I quite like to have the species because I like to see what their elements are, what it is from these plants that have been used and utilised in the new breeding. So with this you get this wonderful big leaf, you get this beautiful green outer on the side, lovely sort of chocolate orange colour to the foliage as well. And because of this you get this contrast, and then up it comes with these flower heads. It's not the most interesting of flower heads on this Huka Americana, but when they open up they are visited by lots and lots of pollinators. So these have what I would call a naked flower. So there's hardly any tube there, but there's lots of pollen, there's lots of nectar. And it's amazing how the bees, the hoverflies, really just get attracted to these. There must be plenty for them to have. Now, unlike quite a lot of other Heucheras, this does not put on a woody base and it does not raise itself up out of the ground, so the clumps stay quite neat and tidy. We don't bother to tidy up all the dead growth here, we just leave it there and allow it to die off on the base of the plant. Now these are woodlanders and they come from quite moist soil, so they do not want to be in a dry position, somewhere where there's a good amount of garden compost in a semi-shady spot, and this will be happy. Once the flowers have finished, you can cut them back down, the foliage will stay looking good. So treat it like all other Heucheras, but just remember, moisture in the soil, a little bit of part shade, and this will be really happy. Huka Americana. Then we go on to a really lovely little Epimedium, and this is Epimedium youngianum Niveum. Now this is a 2-year-old plant in this container. It is covered in these beautiful creamy white flowers, more buds to come. So on every stem like this, leaf and then bud above here. It is unusual or slightly different from other epimediums that you grow because this is totally deciduous. So once it has flowered, put on all of this wonderful new growth and you get a lovely foliage mound. It will stay like that until you get to around about September, and then in September the foliage goes the most gorgeous autumn colours, reds and slightly pinks and yellows, the whole gambit. And once it's finished, loses all of its leaf, you're left with tiny little sticks. That's it, it goes below ground as a true herbaceous perennial. So you don't have to worry about going to this one in the spring and cutting anything back because it's done it all for you. And then in the spring, up it comes, foliage, flower, all at the same time. And these are great because they are clumpers, they don't go running off all over the place, so they go and stay in a slightly smaller position. You can see by the whole of this plant, it's all coming from a basal position like that. Lovely small front of border, shady, drier shade. Very, very useful. You can divide it, and you can divide it in the autumn. Staying with something that is low and ground cover, we've got this beautiful Viola here. It's a shame that you can't smell the flowers on this because the flowers on this scent is absolutely fantastic. It's a very strong, Viola perfume. So this is a large flower. This is technically a violetta. Now a violetta is a cross between a viola and a pansy, and that gives you this beautiful big flower, and this plant reblooms, reblooms, reblooms. Viola Avril Lawson. Now Viola Avril Lawson is an old variety. Oh, it's such a beautiful perfume. What happens is these stems here come up, they put on the first flower, then that finishes, and then this stem grows up and the next flower, then it grows again and the next flower. So these individual arms, when they touch the ground, do not root into the ground. But what they do is they can get a little bit straggly, and they can go out to about 45 to 60 centimetres, 18 inches to 2 feet. But if they hit a hedge, then they scramble up through the hedge, and so it looks as though your evergreen hedge is flowering. If they get a little bit too straggly, then just gather all of this together and give it a haircut, and then it will be back in flower within about 2 weeks. It is something that spreads, and it spreads along the ground, so it's got runners here and it will spread around, so it makes lovely tidy mats, and it's a really good reblooming, not much taller than it is there, and even if the flowers drop down somewhere over something, they will always tip back up to face you. So it's a really super form. Viola Avril Lawson, divisible or from cuttings. Let's see, let's go slightly taller, and we'll go to this one, the fringed Silene. So this is Silene fimbriata. This beautiful white fringed flower here has a bladder behind it, which is lime green, and then up it goes, and then there are more, and then there are more. So it is a great plant. At the moment, this is not a big one, but it will get much larger. They can spread out to, after 2 to 3 years, somewhere around about 2 foot across, 60 centimetres, and then they will be anything from 2 foot, 60 centimetres, up to 3 foot, which is just under a metre high, depending on how moist the soil is. They will tolerate shade, which is dry or moist, as long as there is a good amount of organic matter there in the soil when you put them in. And they are really great plants, making lovely clumps, easy to lift and divide. It is a species, so occasionally you can get it seeding around. If it likes you a lot, then you will get seed. But it is better in a part shade place with a good organic matter base for it to grow into, and it will be really good. And being white, it shows up brilliantly in a dark space. Then the last one I've got is the bleeding heart, and this is the true form of bleeding heart. This is Lamprocapnos spectabilis, used to be dicentra. So these put on these wonderful arms here with these beautiful hanging heart-shaped pink flowers, and this particular variety will put on a lot of stems and get quite tall. It can go up to 2.5 feet, something around about 80 centimetres in height, and then it makes a really good mat at the top there and gradually gets bigger at the base. So after 2 to 3 years, you'd expect this to be somewhere at least 18 inches, 45 centimetres across, lots and lots of arms on there. If you look closely at some of these flowers, you may find that there are little notches and little holes in the tops of the flowers. Don't worry about it. That is the bees being just a little bit lazy and drilling a hole to get the nectar out of the flowers. So it's nothing untoward, because you can't see that from a distance. It's only when you're looking at it really closely that you can see these drilled holes into these actual flowers. These are fabulous plants. Because they're flowering at this time of the year and they're quite fleshy growth, if we get a quick frost, you know, we do get them in May, you will see these just bending over and looking very, very sad, and they will go quite dark and black. Quickly get your secateurs out and cut off the frosted bits, because if you cut off the frosted bits down to another leaf below there, this then won't rot back and kill off the plant, and it will send up more shoots and you'll get a second blooming on it. So that is something to really be aware of. If you suddenly find that you've got a lot of dead flower on there, you can do exactly the same. You can cut it back to half height, down to where there is another leaf, and there is another bud waiting to come up, so you can get secondary blooming on it. You can get it to keep going, and that is the really good thing with this. Please do not try and divide these in the autumn, because they have fleshy roots. They have got no way of healing, because they're not actually growing, and they're not actively growing in the late autumn. So leave the division of these until the spring. So in about the end of February, beginning of March, you'll see shoots coming through. Lift the plant, see where it's growing from, give it a split through, and then it's actively growing, it heals anything, and you will get much better divisions from that. Lamprocapnos spectabilis. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.